Hi everyone! Today what we're going to be doing is actually looking at this little Blue Micro 840 and actually test out, have a little program to actually test if the GPIOs are working fine from a pure keyboard point of view. And first what we're going to do in this tutorial here is first using the USB connection for that. And then next we're going to go into a very similar one, but just using not the USB but the Bluetooth connection. But by using a wired connection, we have a physical connection between this and the computer, and we can actually test it out, see if it works fine. So let's go into the program, and I'm not going to be using the Blue Micro firmware. We're going to go like plain vanilla Arduino for this. And let me just kind of go into not this way but this way. So what I've done here is essentially just loaded up the Arduino IDE, which is essentially the base fundamental requirement to be able to compile the Blue Micro firmware. And we can actually use this for troubleshooting as well. So tools that you're going to need is essentially the in the boards themselves, in the board manager, you need to be able to have this list of board. And you can actually see here, I'm using the Nordic NRF52 840DK, or the PCA 156, which is I have one here around I can show you, but it's essentially the development kit from Nordic. It's got a chip, a couple of buttons, and so on. We can use the Express here. However, the Express, the problem with it is it actually remaps the GPIOs to other locations, to other numbers. So whereas the Nordic, it doesn't. So that's why I really usually recommend using the PCA 10056 for that. Another thing that we will need to be able to get the USB connection is a library. And if we go into Manage Libraries, and this we're going to go and see this here, what we need is the Adafruit Tiny USB library. And let me just... Tiny USB. We're going to look at Tiny USB, and you can see here it's actually installed. I need that to be installed for me to call this library. Now, I've actually created this schematic here, but just from playing the example based on the Tiny USB library called the HID keyboard here. But then I've actually updated it so that I can actually go and scan for all the GPIOs and actually sends. And what I've done here is I've said, oh, here's all the, you could say the relevant mapping between the pin that I've got on my like Pro Micro equivalent, but to the GPIO that it's actually connected to, and I've got like the blue and the red LEDs. Also there. Now you can see if it's like what 32 plus 10, it's actually because it's port 1 like and GPIO 11, like 1.11, and that like 32 plus 11 is 43. So that's why these like pluses are right there. Now, and what I do is I just essentially map out into the pins and a HID code, which is what the library has, is just each of a GPIO, and each has a very simple key. You can just use Notepad to test it out, or you can actually use a nice little website for that. So I'm going to go through the steps at the top just to kind of show you here. So we need to make sure that we've got a Tiny USB library, so we've done that. So we need to go in Tools, Libraries, and search for Tiny USB and install it. We select the Nordic development kit. We select the bootloader, the DFU Adafruit. So it's actually going to be right here, and it's this one here. So we don't want to use a J-Link, because a J-Link is a little tool that looks like this to connect to a programmer, but we don't want to use that. We want to use the bootloader on here. Then we essentially, to be able to flash it, we need to actually put it into a flashing mode. So we just press double reset. So if I go reset, what's gonna come up is gonna show up with a like a boot drive like this, which we don't have to worry about. Now the next step is we go into the tools and go select the port that it shows up. So here in my case it's a Windows machine, so it's COM3. On your machine it may be a little bit different, but you select that. And then you just, what's the next step? You compile and upload. So we're gonna go and press the upload button. It'll automatically compile and it'll flash it to COM3. So now it's waiting for an answer, and it should, there we go, it's detected. And you can see here it's not doing much on there. And the device is programmed. So what's the next step? So just to be sure, once it's flashed, we're going to disconnect, and then we're going to reconnect again. And now it actually should show up as a keyboard. I'm actually not too sure. Let's just go see the device manager, see if it actually shows up right in here. Let me just move it here. I've got a lot of Bluetooth things, but what we want is the human interface device, and it's not, doesn't quite show much here. So let's just go into the other, that's not what I want. It's Bluetooth and other device settings. Now if I just scroll down, I'm not too sure actually which one it would be. Mouse, keyboard, and pen. So I've got one. There we go. nRF52840DK. That's the one that I'm actually, and it sees it as a keyboard. And I've got a few other like Bluetooth keyboard with different battery levels, and so don't worry about that. So now what we need to do is actually test it out. And then for that you'll need some kind of like little wire like this. And let me just zoom out a little bit here so that you see, and we can go into a page that looks like this, like configurator for QMK, which is actually very useful to actually test like keyboards. So what we're going to do here, and let me just make this a little bit bigger so you see what I'm doing. So the first thing I need to do is I actually select a ground pin, and I've got one like right here. And then I can actually go through around the different GPIOs and actually validate whether it actually has a connection. So the first one, I'm going to go this one. Oh, I got to click on it, make sure the page is actually loaded up. So go here. There we go. I've got a 0, 1, then ground, then I've got a number of other ones, so I'm just going to slowly kind of move through here. So we can see I've got all my numbers through, so that's like 10 right there. Then I'm going to go on the other side, and I'm going to have, I just want to make sure I don't press the VCC because it's going to short ground to the 3 volts, so we don't want to do that. But then we kind of go through the other ones. Now, what my configuration, so you can see, and let me just make this a little bit smaller now that you can actually see it. Now, you see I've got like chatter being detected because I've got essentially just a small like wire, and actually goes on and off like very quickly. So I'm not worried about the chatter. All I'm worried about is that actually I've got 0 through 9 and A, B, C, D, all the way to H, which if I go back to my Arduino, if I go down here, so we see D3 all the way to B6, these are the pins. So a key 0 through 9 and A all the way through H. So this essentially maps out that yes, the hardware, the GPIO works fine. So that's the first test, that if you're not sure if you've busted your Blue Micro or like any nRF52840 for that matter, this is a test that you can actually run through and validate whether it's good. Now, if you actually, like for the Blue Micro, this is what you're going to need, like these pin numbers. But if you go to a Blue Nano, if you go to a different, like an RF Micro or anything else, you're going to have to essentially update what these numbers ought to be to the correct GPIO for the hardware that you have. But essentially that's completes the first set of tests that you can actually do to validate if the hardware works fine. And being connected, it actually tests that all that is actually working fine from a pure USB point of view. In the next video, which I still need to set up, is we're going to do the same thing, but using Bluetooth. Using again just a plain USB tester, a plain vanilla tester from Adafruit. So I'm going to be saving this and then putting that on YouTube as the next tutorial, and then I'll move on to the next video. Thanks. Bye.